Hey guys, what's up? It's Ashley. Welcome back to my channel and happy Halloween, because that is the day that I am posting this, because I absolutely suck at doing what I say I'm going to do. I said I was going to post some spooky gothic romances for Halloween, and yeah, all of October happened. So without further ado, here are the recommendations for those, but I included books that are perfect for the entire year round. Like, it's not a Halloween themed book at all, but it just, like, it's good for spooky season vibes. But like I said, also you can read it all year round. These are just like some of the best dark gothic romances that I could find. The first book I have is Pen Pal by Jt Geisinger. This I read on KU. This was a new release, I think in August. I had a friend on Bookstagram recommend it to me, and I think you need to go in blind reading this one. So the only thing that I will say about it is that it starts off with our heroine at her late husband's funeral burying him, and then right after she goes home and she has this kind of creepy, mysterious letter from an inmate at a state prison saying, "I'm waiting for you." And that's all I'm going to say. Like I said, I really think you need to go in blind. But I absolutely loved this story. It was a complete mindfuck, like, at the end. And I didn't hate it at all. So, yes, go try this one. It is free on KU. Okay, so the next three that I'm going to recommend are all by the same author. I recently discovered her because I was purposely trying to find some brand new gothic romances to read for this time of year, and literally all three were absolutely incredible. Some of the best books that I've read this year. So the first one is Master of Salt and Bones, and I do want to say all are available on KU. So this one was kind of, I would say it was like a Beauty and the Beast meets Phantom of the Opera retelling. So it starts off with our main character. She gets this job to be the caretaker of our hero's mom. Basically, she's gotten older, so she's got dementia, and she just really needs help with day-to-day life. And he happens to like reside in this like really creepy kind of seaside castle. I think in Maine is where they lived. And he has rumors around the town where, you know, he's just creepy and people are scared of him and stuff like that. He's scarred on his face. He has scars and stuff like that. And so obviously she goes to work for him, for his mother, and kind of things go from there. I will say definitely look up trigger warnings on here. There are some very dark themes. There are cult themes in here, and like rituals and sacrifices and stuff like that. So like I said, definitely look those up, but this was such a good read. The next one by Keri I want to recommend is The Isle of Sins and Shadows. This was another great gothic romance. So this takes place in New Orleans, I think, or like just outside of New Orleans, like on this little like isolated island, which I thought was really cool. So at the start of the book, our hero, she lives in a cabin with this man who has been raising her since she was a little girl due to her father being brutally murdered in the past. And so she lives, I think, in Michigan at this point. And so then the man that has been raising her, he dies of cancer. And so she ends up traipsing back to Louisiana to her home to, I think, look for something that the guy that was raising for her left her, like some clues. It's a whole thing. This is another one I would kind of suggest going in blind because the setup is kind of confusing. But anyway, she goes back to Louisiana. She grew up in a really big house, and since her father was murdered in this big massacre, no one has really lived there because it's like haunted and stuff like that. So then our hero, he is like this big businessman. He owns a club and everything. He kind of works for the mafia, but he's not the head of the mafia. He has like people above him that he's scared of. And so I will say though that this does have, I think this was age gap. this was age gap, and then there is close proximity in this one. But like I said, this is when I think you should go in blind, because like the setup is really confusing. But this also is another one with heavy cult themes and rituals and sacrifices and stuff like that. So once again, look up trigger warnings. Okay, and then last by Keri, like this is actually a duology, but this was my favorite one out of the ones that I read by her, and it actually might end up being my top read for October. I don't know yet, but that is Nightshade. And this is another one that I think you should go in blind, but this story was absolutely beautiful and heartbreaking and touching, and it gave me every single thing I could have wanted with tropes and everything like that. So I will say that there are two different timeline stories going on here, and there's one that's in the past, like I think like centuries ago, or at least a century ago, and then a modern day one, and then you'll find out how they intertwine with each other. But this really has fated lovers vibes if you are a fantasy reader. Fated mates is like my absolute favorite trope ever in fantasy, and I would say that this book definitely has that fated mates aspect. I love this. So I will say, as opposed to the other two Keri Lake books that I read, this does actually have spooky gothic fantasy elements, as our hero is half demon, and Nightshade is like this kind of purgatory place, I guess you could say, kind of between heaven and hell, I think. I could be totally wrong, but that's what I interpret it as. So like I said, this book was absolutely incredible. I did read it on KU, but it was so good that I had to buy the physical copy so I can go back and annotate. That is how much I loved it. And then right after, I did read the sequel, which I think is Inferno. Here's the cover. If that's not the title, I'm sorry. But it picks up right after book one ends. This one was just as good. I devoured this whole duology in like a day and a half. It was both 5 out of 5 stars for me. Okay, up next we have The Ritual by Chantal Tessier. Tessier, I'm so sorry if I said that wrong. I read this on KU back in January, and once again, this was another, like, I absolutely had to have the physical copy. This was so good. I would say that if you love the Devil's Night series by Penelope Douglas, definitely look into this book, because it really had very, very similar vibes with like revenge and wealthy evil parents and, you know, doing dark, mysterious crap around Halloween and all of that. But anyway, so you have your two main characters, Blakely and Riot, and this is dual POV, which I obviously love. This is a college romance, which gives it another interesting element to it. The whole book takes place at this fictional university. It's called Barrington University, I think. And at this university, they have this society, this secret society that has been around for a really, really long time. And I think it's all men that are in there, and they basically get recruited as freshmen, and they have to do these really dark tasks up until they are seniors, when they get like officially initiated in, like, I mean, they have to kill people and stuff like that to do all that. Well, part of being in this society is that the guys are not allowed to have sex or anything like that until they are seniors and have a female given to them. It's kind of like their reward for doing everything that they were supposed to do those 3 previous years. And then when it's their senior year, they get what's called a chosen, which is a girl that gets invited to this big party if she's chosen by one of these guys. And if she agrees and says yes, they do this little ceremony in front of everyone. And then basically for the remainder of that senior year, that chosen girl belongs to that guy, and no one else can do anything with her unless that guy says it's okay. So obviously Riot's chosen ends up being Blakely. Blakely has a boyfriend that broke up with her right before senior year started because he is also a member of this society, and he knew Blakely was going to get chosen by Riot, and the boyfriend is kind of a bad guy, and so there's this whole like back and forth, stealing her, she's mine, who does she really belong to? Like I said, there's some evil parents in here. This, like I said, this was so good and such a fun time, and it does take place at Halloween time, so it is perfect for spooky season. Okay, and last but certainly not least is another book that I read on KU, but I loved it so much that I absolutely had to buy the physical copy, and that was Phantom by Greer Rivers. This is a Phantom of the Opera retelling, and prior to reading this book, I had never actually seen the movie, but I love the book so much that I watched the movie soon after and loved it as well. So this is a Phantom of the Opera retelling. Like I said, it takes place modern day New Orleans at an arts college. Our heroine is there as a singer, and our Phantom, he is kind of like the head of the mafia in New Orleans. They don't specifically say it's the mafia, but it kind of gives off that vibes. He's known as like the Phantom of the French Quarter, and so he owns this college, and he's been listening to her sing ever since she was brought there, and he's basically been in love with her voice and everything like that. And he wears a mask because he had some trauma and some horrible experiences in his past that left him scarred, and so he's very, very vulnerable, and no one but his family has ever seen him without his mask. He actually lives underneath the school in these tunnels and stuff because he just doesn't like to be seen by anybody. And so like I said, this has mafia vibes because there is another family in New Orleans that kind of rivals his, and the son in this family happens to be a rival love interest for our heroine, and he's a bad guy. He gaslights her, and he's just a horrible person, so you kind of have that rivalness going on, but this was just such an incredibly beautiful story, and it was so heartbreaking. I loved it, and I highlighted so much in this book. Yeah, I absolutely loved it, and it really gave perfect gothic vibes, and yeah, this was just obviously a perfect 5 out of 5, maybe infinity stars for me, I don't know, but this is free on KU. Alright, so that will do it for some gothic and dark romances for spooky season. I hope everybody has a fun and happy Halloween, and I will see you guys very soon for November. Bye.